Howdy folks. Well, we're going to be changing out the injectors on a '09 GMC Sierra with the 5.3. The problems that we're running into and why we're changing out the injectors is it's lacking power. It's got hard starts after running and sitting for a little bit, and just overall poor fuel economy. Now, if the diagnosis is correct, what's happening is that it's called leaky injectors. The injectors literally leak, and even though after you shut the pump off and shut the engine off, there's still pressure in the lines, and that tends to leak through the injectors into the intake, and when you go to start the motor, it literally floods the motor, causing hard starting issues, to the point where you sometimes have to put this thing into clear flood mode to get it to start. So we're hoping to correct a lot of those problems with just putting a new set of injectors in. Since this is my personal truck, I'm going to do all 8 of them. If this was somebody else's truck and they just didn't have cash for a full set of 8 injectors, okay, then we could go further into the diagnosis. But since this is my personal truck, I'm just going to replace all 8 of them and not have to worry about it. Now, one thing I have noticed with injectors nowadays is these new, the Siemens style injectors, the real thin ones such as this truck takes, is the fact that they do run into a lot of problems. And it doesn't matter whether it's a GM product or a Ford product or a Euro product. I've just not had much faith in the Siemens style injectors. Now, first of all, we're going to have to pull the intake tube off. So, we're just going to get the longer extension out. You know what? I'll see you folks when I get this intake tube off. And I'll show you what I did. Alright. One thing we gotta take out is this intake system. And you gotta do it very carefully. And all of our tools are in the way. Okay. 8mm on the clamp. Remember that there's a stud that this rubber grommet plugs into on the intake manifold. And just pulling the intake tube off, I caught a real whiff of let me change the camera here. When I pulled the intake tube off, I got a real strong whiff of E85, which that's what I've been running in this thing for the past couple months now, since it's been fairly decent out. And E85 is $1.89 at the pump, so real good whiff. So I think we're on the right track. This plastic tube, be careful of this plastic tube. It just pulls out. Be careful with it, because these plastic fittings have a tendency to break on a lot of people. Now, looking at how this is fastened, 8mm here and 8mm here, and I haven't looked at the other side, but I'm going to assume another 8mm. And am I right with the 8mm? Yes, I am. So let's see. Go to that side. Now, if you can't remember or you just don't know where your injector clips are, they go, mark them for your cylinders. I know, and I just do. Okay. Pull up on the green clip and then push in on the brown, and the connector will come right out of the injector. You do that another 8 times and then voila. We're gonna have to move some of these because this entire rail is connected to the other rail through a crossover tube. So what it looks like is we're going to need a 10mm socket to pull this upper intake platform off. So let me check on that for a sec here. Yep, 10mm. And it looks like we're going to need a wrench to get back in there. These motors are set back into the firewall fairly far. So I'm going to do that, folks, and then I'm going to come back. All right? All right. This side has a lot of connectors running all which ways. The number 1 injector runs into this thin harness. Your number 2, and if you got one, your flex fuel sensor runs into this thin harness here. Now, number 2, number 3, and number 1 on here, number 3 here, number 5 along there. So just kind of make that note in your head, folks. Not typically I wouldn't say mark them, but in this situation folks, I'm gonna say mark these things because, come on. Okay, there we go. Come on, there we go. Now you're gonna want to pull the entire rail, and that's where you gotta pull these clips and this clip, and we're just gonna do that with a flathead. With standard screwdriving. And you're going to need to invest in one of these things. It's a quick disconnect tool. Makes quick work getting those lines off. Okay, come on. There we go. And come on over. Come on. There we go. This clip says right on it 3/8. You can get those plastic sleeve things. Personally, when I went and bought this, I pretty much chucked those into the back of the toolbox and almost used this exclusively. No. Well, there's that. Okay, how does this come apart now? Oh. Okay, come on. I'm assuming that's a return line. Okay, so we're going to pull the rail with the sensor on it. Now, as you can see, folks, I've had to take that plate off the back, and I've had to take this nut off right here to get this wiring harness loose enough. And we're just going to disconnect it from the alternator so that we don't break anything. And that should be loose enough to where we should be able to get this rail up. Now, can we pull this hose? So, if not, I don't want to do it, but we could pull the lines individually, the rails individually, but I'd like to pull it as an entire assembly, look it over, make sure that everything's good. So, be right back. Alright, I'm going to recommend that you have rags ready when you pull this back fuel line here, folks. Let me see if I can get you in here. Come on. Work with me, camera. Come on. Oh, the heck with it. That back fuel line, have rags ready, because when it does come off, you're just gonna have fuel pouring out. Now, this line, this is easy. Toolless. Push down and then pop off. If you're doing this in a cold climate, I would highly recommend you warm this tube up. Figure out a safe way to warm the tube up without blowing yourself to bits. Okay? So, I got the two 8mm bolts on this side that I gotta pull out, and the entire rail assembly should come up. And I found that it's just easier to pull this tube off the back of the head right here than it is to pull it off at the intake manifold. So keep that in mind as well. So let's see here, folks. We're gonna probably gonna need a longer extension. And these bolts are where? Right here. Okay, we gotta do it with the smaller extension. Now, as you can see, folks, they're coming loose just with an electric ratchet. That's not impacting. So make sure that when you put them back in, you're not over-tightening them. Now, each and every one of the injectors is connected to the rail with clips. Now, this is where the difficulties come in, because you have to be very gentle, because these are going into a plastic intake. Plus, I have also found that these injectors do not like to come out of plastic intakes real well. To the point that I usually try and lube them before I pull them. Okay, so now the tool I'm going to be using is, I would highly recommend getting something better, but for my situation I'm going to do it this way, and pray to God that I don't break anything in the process. Yes. Whoa. Okay. Okay, I think we found our leaky injector. And yep. I guess I'm not going to be starting this thing up for a while. Yep. Okay. Injector on number 5 cylinder is not cooperating like the rest. Because, yeah. Actually, the clip came off. So, now I'm going to pry up on the other side and pray to God that that one comes up. Okay. Now I could go through and I could pull out the good injectors out of this entire batch, but I look at it like, well, I don't care. I'm just going to chuck them in the parts bin anyway, and if they're needed, they're needed. If they're not, well, oh well. Okay. Try and not grab onto the wire. There we go. Oh boy, that lighter side came out. Yay! Okay, we're going to need to unplug our maps sensor. Yeah, this is your map sensor, folks. You do have one on certain models. Actually, I'm trying to think if any of the models came without them. And my head's drawn a big blank as no. I think, okay, I do believe in this generation of LS, they all came with map sensor. So. Okay. And okay. Oh, we have a pressure line, pressure regulator line. Uh-oh. Yeah. Look at this. Let's see how this is supposed to come out. Because, oh boy. Lip collar? What are we looking at here? Okay. Beautiful. And you've got to come over. And yeah, I can already tell these injectors are blue. I do believe that these are the original injectors from 2009 on this thing. So I'm going to fight with this thing to get it to come off. And when I do, I'll bring you back to put injectors in. Okay. As you can see, we got the rail assembly off. Now, this is where there's going to be debate and discussion. dielectric grease or no dielectric grease. Okay. I'm going to tell you folks flat out. You pull these injectors, and you end up with that. That is kind of why you want the dielectric grease. Now, you can come in here with a pick style tool. Do not gouge the inside of this. Okay. Do not gouge the inside of this. You can just pick it out, and I'm going to tell you flat out what I'm going to do. I'm going to dielectric just the O-rings. Okay? Now, these ones are a lot smaller than the new ones. And I'll probably put some dielectric around the connector gasket. Other than that, it's really your personal preference if you want dielectric. Now, there's some idiots out there that think you should put something in your nozzles. Don't ever put anything in your nozzles. Don't even freaking look in there. It's my best advice to you. Okay? So, because that is the part that has to stay clean. Because that is what meters your fuel. You know, and folks, if you leave it in the comments, I could do a short video on injectors. I'm talking about the different styles of injection systems. A lot of them, ironically, come out of GM. You know, everybody thinks that Ferrari, Porsche, and all of them have such oddball injector designs. Well, they've got Volkswagen has a few, but realistically, folks, GM has some of the most oddball injector designs. Yeah, see, this injector's already falling apart. You know. I mean, realistically, folks, do you really want to reuse an injector that's bad? And yes, I know that the new injectors are not that great a quality, but the thing is that for many of you out there, I know that you'll be buying something just as high quality as this. Because I know that a lot of you ain't going to spend the money on a set of high quality injectors. Especially since you can pick a set of these from the usual online suppliers for about $300 for the full set. So, and no, I would never go to the auto parts store because those guys just have you coming and going. So, injectors. So yeah, folks, if you want to, and what I'm clipping into is this little notch right in here. That is what I'm clipping it onto. Make sure that your connector points to the outside of the rail sets, so that you can actually connect your connectors. Now these injectors I'm seeing, they have seen miles. Why do I say that I know that they've seen miles? Whoop. Well, for starters, I know that they've seen miles because of all the carbon that's built up around them. Computers not being able to control fuel correctly causes a lot of it. Okay. And I'm just going to empty this rail, folks. I kind of don't care. I want this rail empty. So, now, why do I say that these Siemens style are not my favorite style of multi-port fuel injector? I really haven't found that many companies that can produce these at an affordable price point that are of really any genuine quality. You know, when it comes to these Siemens style injectors, the race proven ones are kind of the ones you want to go with. And make sure that you get this clip on to both sides of the injector. And this is another reason why you want to pull this entire rail assembly, is because you can pop it up and you can put just one injector in, but the thing is that to get the clip on, you got to get it in there correctly, which means that that clip that goes onto the injector can actually go, and I don't know if you folks saw it, it'll actually clip itself here underneath the O-ring and here onto the other one. So make sure that when you're doing this, you're actually getting the clip in there correctly. And I'm just using my thumbs to pull the clips off. So I think, yes. And yes, I got something to catch this. So, I think that you've watched me put 4 of these in. I think you can figure out how to put the other 4 in. I'll be back when I go to put it into the truck. Now, I've got the other side pushed in already. And I'm going to tell you this much, folks. Your driver's side here is going to be your hard side. Why? Well, you've got all your connectors that you've just taken off. You've got evap lines. You've got all these lines that you've got to put back on. And realistically, folks, I'm going to tell you this much. I would highly recommend dielectric grease, or if you have children in the house, go get some Vaseline, some petroleum jelly, and put it on those O-rings, because they're really going to help you when you're putting them into the intake manifold. Now, another thing that I've failed to mention until this point is make sure that when you're pulling all the injectors out, that you are, in fact, getting the O-rings with them. That means go through your injectors and make sure that you're getting upper O-ring, and on mine, on a few of them, this little plastic green piece actually fell into the rail. This is another reason why I'm telling you to pull the entire rail assembly, not just pull each individual injector. The bottom, make sure that you've got that O-ring out of the bottom of the intake so that you can actually make sure that when you're pushing these down in, you're not pushing them onto an old O-ring. Now, when you do get them in, they will click. They will make a clicking noise. Okay. And where the mounting bolts go, folks, that will be flat against this intake. There. That's a good click. Now, since these are quick connect lines, you just push it in till it clicks. So, make sure that you click that in. Don't forget your evap hose. Ta-da! And now you just start connecting everything back up. Now, the upper hose did finally come off for us. So remember to put that back just like that. Your straight piece goes into your intake, your curved piece goes into the back of your cylinder head. So I'm gonna connect everything up and be right back. Alright folks, I have found a neat little trick on how to put these connectors on. You put a number 12 wrench, a 12mm wrench between the two wires and gently push it on. Thing is that you don't want to bend the wires, and the green clip at the end of the connector has to stay out until the connector is all the way into it. Now, when it comes to bolting down the rail, you want to get all four of them started and then put them all, tighten them all down. If you don't do it that way, the rail will be off kilter and you won't be able to get one of the bolts in. So be careful with that, and I just kind of wanted to make that little note. And for some reason, when I'm putting these connectors on, they're not making a real good click when you push them on. For me, your results may vary, but I have not had a good real click to mine, so that's something that I am kind of disappointed about, so keep that in mind. Okay, now we're going to tighten the bolts down, and if you are using a battery operated tool, make sure that you got the torque setting down on low, not on murder me tight. Okay. I'm pretty much doing it that tight, and the rail is not moving. You do not need these to be murder me tight. Now, put that back when you get done with that side of the rail. And I'll show you why. Because if you don't, this entire wire harness assembly, you're going to want to take and leave the one for your alternator off so that you can move your entire assembly off to the side. And there, it's tight. It's not moving. And then the one way in the back here, okay. Your rail is tight. You can put this back on. You can clip it in, but you're going to want to have a clear line of vision and make sure to check and make sure all of your connectors are all the way seated. If they're not, now is the time to do it. Like this. My number one connector is not seated all the way. Like I said, a number 12, a 12mm socket. Sorry, I've been talking about drill bits lately, so I got drill bits on my mind. Like I said, make sure that the connector's not going to come off. Then put your clip down. Number 2 is tight. Number 3 and number 4 on this side is tight. Don't forget your stainless steel clip for this. There. And that just prevents, if I remember correctly, that's supposed to prevent it from kinking and essentially blowing up your motor. Now, this is where, folks, you're going to want to have a flashlight handy, and these injectors are supposed to be dry at this point. Now, go and cycle your key a couple times. I'm going to bring you over to the injectors, and you know what? I'm going to bring you right in there, and I'm going to, come on, talk to it. We're going to look and make sure all these injectors, let me back it up, so I can also get the fuel line in the back. Now, we're going to cycle the key a couple times just to pressurize the lines. Okay. I did that 3 times, folks. Now, look in there, and as far as I can see, we're dry. I'm not smelling fuel. Alright, sorry about that, folks. So, now we've cycled the key a couple times. And we're going to come over to this side. And we don't see anything. And as far as I can tell, there's no fuel outside the rail. So, we're going to put the intake system back together. We're going to put the top portion of the intake back together, and then we're going to fire it up. So I'm going to do that, and we'll see you in a minute. Alright, intake tubes back on. Make sure all of your connectors are in. Like I said, the line just unplugs, plug it back in. Make sure all of your connectors are nice and tight. Any lines that you had to move, such as these coolant lines, I had to move these to get to the injectors. And when you're pulling on these lines, don't pull too hard, because your heater core is way the heck back in there, and you don't want to break your heater core. That requires your entire dash to be disassembled to pull that heater core out. So just FYI. I think we're almost ready to see, will it fire up or will it blow up? That's another big thing. You got to be careful of, because if you've got any excess fuel down in the intake, it can blow up. Haven't seen it happen for a while, but yep. Okie dokie. Well, let's fire her up. I'm going to put you folks actually here, so there's a show. You can watch it. Well, there we go, folks. One nice, smooth running motor. Well, I hope that this video helped some of you folks and gave you some of the tips to do this yourself. So, thanks for watching. If this helps you, give us an old thumbs up, okay? See you in the next one.